Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be discussing what I think is an interesting topic. And if you agree, please leave a like. Likes tell YouTube to share the video with other people similar to us that have similar viewpoints and interests. So, really appreciate it. It's a simple little effort on your part, but it makes a huge, huge difference to me. So, um, yeah, today's topic, if you read the thumbnail, is about Theia and the Earth. Now, the leading theory of how the moon was formed, as many of you know, is that a Mars sized body slammed into the Earth relatively gently. It was a glancing blow, otherwise, it would have completely destroyed the Earth, and the Earth would not have the mass that it has today if it existed at all. So, the leading theory, the leading hypothesis, if you want to put it that way, is that a Mars sized world pretty much grazed the Earth, and most of the material sunk down into inside of the Earth, and about I won't say 3%. What is it? One eightieth of the material of the Earth and Theia formed the Moon, because the Earth is 80 times the mass of the Moon. So it's very, very small compared to the Earth. It's fairly large in size. It's a big moon, don't get me wrong, but as far as mass goes, it would take 81 moons to equal the mass of the Earth. So, all right, so today's hypothesis is what if, right? What if instead of hitting the Earth, Theia was captured by the Earth? Now, this is entirely possible. In fact, some scientists actually speculate that I'm trying to find the Earth. Where is it? Hang on. I'm gonna turn on labels. I don't even see it. Okay, labels are on. There we go. So we're gonna check out the Earth. Anyway, scientists speculate that. There we go. There's our Earth. Now, of course, it wouldn't have looked like this back then. It wouldn't even look like this, a couple 100 million years ago. So, but it's the only Earth model that we currently have. But at the distance of the Moon, we've got Theia. Now, Theia would not be 181st the mass of the Earth, because again, Theia was a Mars-sized body. So Theia would be about 10%, 8 times the mass of the Moon, or 10% of the Earth. So that's what Theia's mass would be. And unfortunately, there should be clouds. It's nice and temperate. It's the same temperature as the Earth because, well, as you can see, we're together in the habitable zone, and actually on the warm side of the habitable zone. But what's interesting is, unlike the Earth and Moon, I'm trying to get them both in the picture here. Unlike the Earth and Moon, where the Moon pretty much circles the Earth, and their mutual center of gravity is within the Earth, because you're talking about, the Earth being 81 times the mass of the Moon. With Theia, if Theia still existed and was captured by the Earth, they actually have this kind of orbit, and they orbit together around the sun like this. So the Earth is going around a point, probably about there, and Theia is orbiting around that same point as well. It's called a barycenter. Barycenter, I believe is how you pronounce that. But it's when you've got two large bodies like stars or planets, and the center of gravity between the two is outside the body of one, then they both orbit a pointed space between each other. So, like as happens with Alpha Centauri A and Alpha Centauri B, they actually orbit each other much the same way because they're relatively similar in mass, very close actually. So, in the grand scheme of things, but yeah, so this was a possibility for the Earth, and it didn't pan out. In fact, a lot of scientists believe that when the Earth was forming and it was making its trip around the sun, that Theia actually formed within our orbit. So Theia was a planetesimal or planetoid that formed in a very similar Earth orbit as the Earth did. And at some point earlier in history, I think about in the first 100 million years, it just got too close and Earth's gravity pulled it in. Now, like I said, again, it was a glancing blow, but it could have just as easily have been captured by the Earth. And it may have been captured by the Earth briefly, but the early solar system was a very chaotic place, so you had rather large masses in that ballpark being slung around the solar system in crazy chaotic orbits. The current orbits that we see today are very circular and stable because they have to be. If they weren't stable and they were chaotic, they wouldn't stay that way for very long, because all the other masses in the solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, they all act on these worlds and they round out the orbit. So either, and essentially you either have a somewhat circular orbit and survive, or you have an elliptical orbit and you die. We see that demonstrated again and again every time comets pass around the sun. They have highly elliptical orbits, and they don't typically survive. So, anyways, I just thought that was an interesting thought, kind of what could have been. Like, how fascinating would that have been to, instead of having our lovely moon that we have today, instead having another water world, just a hop, skip, and a jump across the void, to visit. How fascinating would that be? And another thing is unlike Mars today, which has a very dead core. I shouldn't say dead. It's not dead. It's smaller. It's not as differentiated. In other words, like, some of the radioactive material is very spread out. It's very sparse. It's not concentrated in the inner core like larger worlds like Earth and Venus. And that's because Mars's lower gravity, it didn't have the power to do that. So, but yeah, like, how fascinating would that be to have a world like this in orbit around the Earth? I mean, there's no reason why it wouldn't have liquid water. We have liquid water on our surface, and it's very likely that, I shouldn't say very likely, it's possible that Venus had liquid water on its surface up until about 700 million years ago. At least that's the current thinking. But anyways, yeah, instead of, what I was saying is, instead of Theia having a dead or dying inner core like Mars does, because of the gravitational interactions with the Earth, both the Earth's core and Theia's core would be much, much hotter than Mars. Well, our Earth's core already is much, much hotter than Mars, but I'm saying Theia, being the same size as Mars, would have a much hotter inner core because of the tidal forces being generated between these two worlds. Now, interestingly, it's not all sunshine and roses. One of the problems with this is we almost certainly wouldn't be here, but life on Earth may have had a much harder time, because the same processes that heat the core of Theia would also heat Earth's core, and Earth already has an extremely hot core. So Earth might end up being something like Venus, actually, having much more carbon dioxide spewed into the atmosphere, much more volcanic activity than it already does. So, it's like I said, it's not all sunshine and roses. We may gain a world in the habitable zone capable of supporting life as we know it, with a much stronger magnetic field than Mars had, because of the gravitational interactions with the Earth. But we also most likely would have made the Earth inhospitable to life. It would have been much, much hotter. The atmosphere would have much more carbon dioxide as a result of the increased volcanism. Of course, we're wildly speculating here, but I mean, certain things we can tell, or at least make a very educated guess on. But anyways, yeah. So I just had this thought. I was trying to think of a video for you guys to enjoy, and you know what we you know, what we're doing now with powerful computer modeling is showing us that it's given us a good idea of how the collision with Theia actually generated the moon. And if you've been reading the news lately, they actually think they have found the remnants of a Mars-sized world inside of our planet. Because, of course, the core of Theia, most of Theia, would have wound up inside the Earth, with only a few remnants of the Earth and Theia mixing in orbit and becoming the moon. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Like I said, if you liked the video, please give it a like, share it with any friends or family that might be interested in topics like these, and if you're on X, Twitter, please follow me there. There's links in the description. I would love to have more than 60 followers over there on X, but I discuss a lot of things about NASA and the space program and SpaceX and where we're going and how we need to get there. So love to have you following on X and Twitter. Well, X is Twitter. I have a hard time saying X. I keep wanting to say Twitter. It's ingrained in us. So anyways, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all soon.